Welcome to History of India, Week 3. This week we're going to look at researching and writing critiques for this class. For critiques in this class, please do not use vulgar language or cliches. Do not use general encyclopedias. Specialized encyclopedias, however, such as the World History Encyclopedia and the Encyclopedia of Asian History are okay. If you're uncertain, please email or call me. Do not use websites. In our syllabus, we see this general rubric which shows how I'm going to grade each of your critique essays. So let's look at that for a minute. It consists of 100 points, and there are 4 different categories. So what you should do when you're research and writing, and when you've completed especially your critique essay, is look over this and see that you've done everything that the critique rubric asked you to do. 15 points are divided into 2 sections here: comparing and contrasting the assigned and this student, that is your scholarly outside source readings. Comparing and contrasting, you don't need to get like fanatical about this and compare and contrast everything there is between every reading. That's not the point of this. What I'm just trying to get you to do is some critical thinking. And critical thinking usually means being able to analyze something, to be able to synthesize it, to be able to compare and contrast. So that's just all part of critical thinking skills. So in other words, I want you to connect the dots. I don't want you to just summarize what you've read, and we'll discuss that more in a minute. 2, you should relate to the time period of the readings for the week. So, if you're talking about the 19th century, that is the 1800s, then stick with the 1800s. 30 points are divided into 2 categories. Now, these two points are very important. You see that this is the category with the second highest number of points. So I want you, in addition to reading the assigned readings for the class for each week, to find some other scholarly reading on your own that has not been assigned. And we are going to call that the scholarly outside source. And again, I don't want you using general encyclopedias for this, like Wikipedia, Encarta, Britannica, etc., or general websites. I'm going to specify what kinds of things you need and what would be included or considered a scholarly source. Again, we're going to do that more in this lecture. And then I want you to provide at least 1 footnote in each critique essays, as well as a bibliography, and I want those to be correctly cited. We're going to show you how to do that as well. Now, when you're reading, and you're reading critically, and you're kind of synthesizing and analyzing things, you should begin, especially once you've chosen your outside source, to begin to kind of tease apart the arguments that the authors of the assigned readings and your own reading that you found are trying to make. And you want to do this as objectively, as impartially as possible. Now, no matter what discipline you're in, you've learned by now in your career that we need to try to be objective. We need to try to find the truth. And, so if you're writing a paper in science, it would not be appropriate to say, I think that there is such a thing as gravity. Because, again, we don't care what, in essence, someone thinks. What we care about is what the truth is, or what the truth appears to be. And that means sometimes that we formulate questions about the material. Have we always wondered this or that about the British rule over, for instance, India? And as you read, are you thinking of more questions? Are you trying to think of maybe what an author has left out or possibly glossed over in their writing? 40 points. So this is the biggest category over here, is that the essay needs to be at least 750 words, which isn't very long, and it needs to be in a Word or a Word-compatible file, and it needs to be uploaded. You'll see that, how that is done on the website. And then we're going to talk about this right in a minute, that the essay has a theme or themes, and so let's leave that for a minute from now. That it contains an introduction, body, and conclusion, and that it is written with proper grammar, correct spelling, and punctuation, and professional voicing too. So in history at this level, we definitely want to avoid saying I, my, me. Again, because that goes directly against this argument of hey, what we're looking for is objectivity and not opinion. So what do we mean more by the essay should contain a theme or themes? Well, what we mean, first of all, is that this critique essay that you'll write is not merely a summary of the readings. And in fact, in 750 words, it would be impossible to summarize all of the reading that you had for that week. So we're not interested in a Cliff Notes thing. We're not interested in a kind of outline form. A summary is one thing, but being able to analyze and come up with a theme is another. So each week there are going to be many different themes in your reading. You probably find 3 or 4 or 5 themes just rolling out there, and you choose one that interests you. So again, you don't, and what you're doing is you're just kind of proving to me that you've read the material, you can find a theme, something that really interests you, you can pursue further research on that, and you can write about it in a critical and a professional way. Now, a theme is not a category. So a theme would not be, this week I will be examining politics in late 19th century India. That is not a theme. That is a category. A theme, however, would be something like, quote, after World War II, and obviously this is not an example from India, and it's purposely not an example from India so that I can, not give too many things away. I don't want to give themes to you because you're fully able and smart enough to find those yourself in Indian history. After World War II, the American economy boomed as many people rose into the ranks of the middle class. That's a theme, that's a thesis, that's something that you would state in your introduction with a couple more sentences. So you would have an introduction. You would then take 2 or 3 paragraphs in the body of your critique essay proving this, giving examples, specific examples of this. And then in the conclusion, you would repeat this in a slightly different manner and basically summarize very quickly the way that you prove that. Now, an example of a poor, unprofessional introduction with no clear theme would be this. Let me read it over very quickly, and you'll hear why this is unprofessional, a poor essay. In this paper, I am going to talk about the economy. The assigned readings were really interesting this week. The economy was really good after World War II in the United States. People wanted to buy stuff. They couldn't buy things during the Great Depression, and the factories only made guns and bombs during the war. People couldn't attend college, and some people had no place to live. Women worked a lot in factories. There weren't enough apartments to rent, not enough money to buy homes. But America is a great country, and we proved it after World War II. Well, I think I know that you see why this is kind of a 5th, 6th grade paragraph. And beginning, you're saying, in this paper I'm going to talk. Well, you don't need to say I, right? We're just going to state the theme like we do down here. After World War II, the American economy boomed. Okay, so leave out I. I'm going to talk about the economy. That sounds like a 6th grader. And now you say the assigned readings were really interesting this week. Well, you don't say this. The poor student says this. Again, really interesting. What does that mean, and why do we care? Why does your reader care? Why does the professor care? Because the professor assigned the readings for a purpose. Sometimes the reading might be interesting to one person, extremely boring to someone else. It's really a point of view kind of thing. What the readings were assigned for is because of the material, the content, and the themes that they had and what the professor wants you to learn from them. The economy was really good after World War II. What does that mean? People wanted to buy stuff. What kind of stuff? They couldn't buy things during the Great Depression. Really? The factories only made guns and bombs during the war? Seriously? They made other things. People couldn't attend colleges? Really? Some people had no place to work, etc., etc. But America is a great country, and we proved it after World War II. Please avoid this kind of opinion. Again, I think America is a great country. You think America is a great country. We all do. But again, this is more opinion. We want to make it very, very professional. Example of a good professional introduction with clearly stated themes. So let me read this through and see if you can't hear the differences yourself. After World War II, the American economy boomed as many people rose into the ranks of the middle class. For over a decade and a half, the Great Depression and then World War II had restricted consumer spending. In the post-war period, American consumers were eager to buy domestic goods, ranging from automobiles to radios and washing machines. Their pent-up demands for the latest innovations spurred manufacturers to retool their facilities. Shifting from wartime production to domestic goods, factories churned out cars, appliances, toys, and clothing. Store shelves abounded with merchandise. Veterans enrolled in record numbers in colleges nationwide, and the construction and sale of housing units skyrocketed. Well, we can see that this is much more detailed, and this expresses, it wasn't that people couldn't buy things. Their consumer spending was restricted for obvious reasons. It wasn't that factories only made guns and bombs. It's that factories had to concentrate on those things, etc. So you see, this is your theme. This is your thesis. This is kind of setting up the whole essay. And then you're really saying a few things here. You're talking about consumer spending. You're going to talk about veterans enrolling in record numbers in colleges, and you're going to talk about the construction and sale of housing units skyrocketing. And all three of those things are going to be done in one paragraph. The next paragraph is going to talk about merchandise. The paragraph after that is going to talk about colleges and veterans going off to college. And the third paragraph after this introductory is going to talk about the sale and construction of housing units. See, so you've actually set up your paragraphs here, and then in the end, the concluding paragraph is going to summarize it all. In terms of finding a scholarly outside source for your critique, please feel free to consult with me, a librarian, another professor, etc. You can always call me on my cell phone, or you can email me. I'm always happy to help students. Please do not share your scholarly outside source with another student in this class. And please do not ask another student in this class to share their scholarly outside source with you. What we're looking for is you to do independent research and work. Blackboard includes sophisticated plagiarism software for professors, and we're going to be talking about plagiarism in a minute. But it also is keeping track not only of papers in the whole nation on, say, that particular topic, it's keeping track of internet websites. So if you go to an internet website and you just cut and paste something, Blackboard's going to find that. And it's also keeping track of any paper that has ever been submitted for My India class by any student at any time. And it's keeping track of the ones that are being submitted as we speak in this class. So again, it's important not to share scholarly sources. If I suspect plagiarism, I reserve the right to give each student a 0 for the critique. Again, please do not plagiarize, and please do your own work. Now, we talked about footnotes, and footnotes appear at the bottom of a foot of a page. Endnotes appear at the end of a paper. For this class, we'll be encouraging you to use in-text footnotes. So what is an in-text footnote? An in-text footnote looks like this. That is, you go ahead and you've gotten all this information from this source over here, and you're summarizing that information, that data, which you got from a source, and you want to tell what source you got it from. So an in-text footnote puts a parentheses, the last name of the author, the year of publication, a comma, the page number you got it from, end parentheses, and a period. It's that easy. It's really easy, and it's really neat for you to see where it came from and for me to see where it came from. Now, in addition to that, because you're just saying McKay back here, you're not saying, the name of the title of the book or anything else, or the publisher, So in addition to that, you have a bibliography at the end. So a bibliography is where you would take that McKay and you would put his first name and you would put the title of the book and where it was published and the publisher, etc. Now, bibliographies are really easy to do nowadays because there are a number of free programs available to assist you with correctly citing bibliographic references. One's called eTurabian.com. That one you have to sign up for. It is free, but you have to, have your username and password. It is a good one for history majors to get to know. This one is, I think, Citation Machine, the one that you would probably most like. Well, we use Chicago style, so let's hit this. This is an example. And the neat thing is that this thing is tied in to WorldCat. Now, we're going to be talking about WorldCat or World Catalog in this very lecture. So let's just look up a well-known historian called Tenkate and see what books we can find. And oh, wow, look at this one. We found the Encyclopedia of Northern Kentucky by Dr. Tenkate. And look at, I just put in the name of the author, and it has put in the book title, the city, the press, and the year, all automatically. Now, sometimes if it can't find it in WorldCat, that's a different story. But we're going to hit Create Citation, click that, and look at blah. It has done a correct citation, so that's all you have to do is copy and paste this thing. And it was that easy. Now you can also do a manual entry mode, and what I'll let you do is look this over and experiment with it yourself. Okay, so now we need to go back to the proper thing here. A bibliography is a list of your sources used given at the end of your paper. It includes important information such as the author's first and last name, the title of the book or the title of the article, the place of publication, the publisher for a book or the name of the journal, magazine, or newspaper that you got an article from, the date of publication, and that could be a year for a book or the volume, issue, number, date, etc. for an article. Bibliographies are listed in alphabetical order by the author's last name. If the author's last name is the same, like Jane, I made this totally up, right? Jane Doe, then you go to the first name. So Jane, so Doe, 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 but Jane comes before John. Now, if you would actually have two articles or sources from the same person, which can happen many times in papers, not usually critique essays for this class, but in, say, papers in your senior seminars, then you would go to the third thing, right, the next thing in line, and this would be this, and M comes before T. Well, lo and behold, when we did that in-text footnote, here is where we got it from. McKay, John P., Bennett D. Hill, John Buckler, Patricia, and they were all editors of History of World Society, 7th edition, Boston, Houghton Mifflin, 2007, etc. So here I show you how to do a bibliographic citation for a book with multiple authors or editors or even multiple editions. I show you how to do it for a dissertation. I show you how to do it for a scholarly article, a popular magazine, a newspaper article, a book review, a manuscript, interview by you, etc. And, that's all well and good and interesting, and you can go ahead and print all this out or refer to it. But then you have, the citation machine and eTurabian and all that other stuff that will do it for you. So, again, if you have any problems with any of this, please talk it over with me. Now, where do you go, you ask, for an additional source, a trustworthy source? Well, we're going to avoid those internet websites, including Wikipedia. We're going to avoid general encyclopedias. And again, please don't interpret that to mean that I dislike the internet. I want to teach you how to conduct scholarly research. Well, we are very, very fortunate for you to have access as a student, whether you're a student here at NKU or you're just taking this class at NKU, you have literally access to thousands, hundreds of thousands of possibilities through NKU's Steely Library, which has a bunch of digital resources. Now remember, digital resources on a website like NKU Steely Library are not the same as internet resources, okay? Digital resources from the Steely Library or any other kind of public library or academic library are fully okay. Now, the site for nku.edu and for the Steely Library at NKU is constantly in flux and changing. They're trying to make it better and better all the time. And, you know, so bear with me here. You have to kind of play with the site yourself. But usually you can go to the quick links in the upper right-hand corner of nku.edu, somewhere on the home page, and find something like Library Steely. And then once you get there, you know, you'll have to put in your username and password if you're going to use Steely Library databases. And then you're usually going to find all kinds of things, and they have all kinds of research help on the Steely Library. They have things like research guides. They will have things specifically, say, for instance, on world history. They have the picture and the person who mainly does, Mr. Alan Ellis, is the one who is really your source for history-related things at the library. You can email him, you can call him, but you can actually, you know, email, call any of the librarians. They're all very helpful, you know, if you really need help and you can't find the answers yourself. Well, there are all kinds of things like Credo reference ebooks through the Steely Library databases. And you might say, an ebook? I don't have time to read an entire book every week. Again, I'm not asking you to read an entire book every week. Sometimes you might find a chapter in one of these electronic books or ebooks that deals with India. That's just like reading an article someplace. So don't necessarily rule out ebooks. You might find a chapter or so that makes sense for you. They have all kind of humanities ebooks as well. You also can check out the journals. And we have at Frank Steely Library at NKU a ton of journals to access. Now, one of the major kind of systems to help you find articles in history, and in fact in many disciplines, is called JSTOR. JSTOR. And JSTOR stands for Journal Storage. So let's do an example, and let's take one from European history. I put in Habsburg Dynasty, and again, these kind of, you know, formats change constantly, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of what you would do. You can sometimes limit the number of entries that you get, because, you know, if you don't somehow limit it, you could get thousands and thousands of entries. So I clicked only content that I can access, and then I said I'm only interested in journal articles from 1990 to 2013, you know. You can click that you want just scholarly articles, that you want history articles, etc. And even there I found like an abundance, thousands of items. And usually when you click on those items, a short abstract appears that tells you what it's all about. So, you know, before you go to there and read the items, you can say, hey, would this really be good for my paper? And if you say, hey, this looks like something I want to read, it was something I want to use for my paper, then if you click the PDF, the article will download for you. So you don't have to leave the comfort of your own home or office or wherever you're doing this at. You can get it as a PDF article. And now remember, it will download for you as long as you've logged into the NKU website with your username and your password. Very often the first page of the downloaded article has a bibliographic citation, such as this one does. Look, it says who the author is, it gives the title, it gives the source. It was in the journal called Mediterranean Studies. It was volume 1. It was in 1989, etc. Now, these are not necessarily in Chicago Turabian style, but you have everything you need, so you could go to that citation machine and put in all this information, and then it'll make the citation for you in the proper order. Okay? Under the Databases tab, there is a treasure trove of digital full-text articles accessible through JSTOR, through Academic Search Premier, and Project Muse, and to name but a few. And experiment with these yourselves in finding articles for your critique essays. These are the three that we use most, these databases most in history: JSTOR, Academic Search Premier, and Project Muse. For instance, if you go to JSTOR, you can find things. You can click databases and go to WorldCat. WorldCat is literally World Catalog. That is a library catalog for major and even minor universities and public libraries around the world. WorldCat is absolutely amazing. If you find a book there somewhere else in the US or in the world and you want to use it, generally for a course other than this one, because this is only 8 weeks, you can complete what's called the Source Finder electronic form for NKU, and they'll get the book sent to you, or they'll get things scanned for you and sent to you. For instance, we're putting in my favorite historian and your favorite historian, Encyclopedia of Northern Kentucky, hitting that and finding that, there are quite a number of libraries worldwide that have this item. In fact, from the time I originally did this, it's increased the number of libraries that have it. And sometimes you can even find it in a digital format, and in fact, the Encyclopedia of Northern Kentucky is now digital. Again, something that you would care about if you were in a different course. I'm just using that as an example. Now, a note about plagiarism. This is all in the syllabus. Please note that plagiarism includes quoting or using word from a book, journal, article, internet, or other source verbatim, that is word for word, without putting the quote in quotation marks. Paraphrasing another person's unique ideas, thesis, themes without giving them credit. Using another person's tables, graphs, photographs, artwork, or illustrations without giving them credit. Using all or part of another student's paper or presentation, even if that student approves. Using a paper or presentation from a free essay or presentation website or service, or buying a paper or presentation from a website or service. So how do you avoid plagiarism? It's very easy to avoid plagiarism. We're going to go back to this example. Between 1750 and 1900, the population of Asia followed the same general trend as scholars now realize. China, by far the world's most populous country in the middle, increased from about 143 million in 1741 to a little more than 400 million in the 1840s. Here I am directly quoting word for word, that is verbatim, out of this source. Therefore, I need to put the word for word verbatim words, sentences in quotation marks, and I need to go ahead and footnote them. Now, again, I could use them as a footnote, or I could have put just here an in-text note right after them. Now, if I'm doing something just really, really long, like this entire paragraph, if I decide to take this entire paragraph word for word, that is verbatim, and put it in my paper, then you have to do, if it's really long, something called block quotations. And block quotations look like a block, hence the name. And so this is what you would do. You would have what you wrote, blah, 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 blah. As fellow authors trace the importance. And then here you go ahead and you indent and you put it single space. And this tells the whole world this is a really, really, really long quote, and I have quoted it word for word. Okay? That's what that tells them. Now, let's say you're paraphrasing the information. Now, I don't know if you all like, The Big Bang Theory, and it has Sheldon, and Sheldon has an eidetic memory, and he can remember things he read and saw, years before. Well, psychologists actually debate whether there is such a thing as an eidetic memory or not. Let me just tell you this, in 30 years of being in academia, I have never met a colleague, that is a fellow professor, or a student who has a Sheldon, that is eidetic memory. So you and I don't run around and know that this kind of information, that China's population went from 143 million in 1741 to more than 400 million in the 1840s. We just don't walk around and know that kind of stuff. Here, we read it here, And so even though we've paraphrased what this says, and we're not doing it word for word, we still have to, because we've taken data or we've taken a specific idea, we have to go ahead and footnote it. And again, you can footnote it or you can use an in-text note. Now, not to get fanatical about this, not to get obsessive compulsive about this, you don't have to footnote generally known or widely disseminated information. You know, and I give examples here. Christopher Columbus sailed to America in 1492. Mother Teresa was a great humanitarian. President Kennedy was assassinated in November 1963. The U.S. entered World War II after the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor. You know, this is contained in thousands or millions of articles and books, and you learned it in school and you heard it here and there. So, you know, this is not the kind of stuff you need to footnote. However, if you would use, you know, somebody's graph or photograph or something else like that, and you didn't make it up, you need to footnote it. Now, any questions, please feel free to email or phone me. I'm always happy to help, and I hope you have a really good week ahead.